5 years after our divorce, the wealthy man I used to be married to sent me a seat assignment for his second wedding, table 27, hidden beside the catering doors. His mother expected me to arrive alone, sit where the important guests could barely see me, and watch their families celebrate the woman who had replaced me. I brought our 3 5-year-old sons instead. Their father had never met them. The moment the boys crossed the garden in matching black suits, guests began staring. My former mother-in-law tightened both hands around the balcony railing. During the ceremony, the groom finally looked toward our table and saw 3 small children with his eyes, his hair, and his face. His hand stopped while he was putting the ring on his bride. Later, he came to my table and asked why I had kept his sons from him. I made the decision I believed would keep them safe, I said. You can spend years being angry about that, but today you need to decide whether you see 3 children or 3 new heirs to your family fortune. The wedding invitation had arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was inside a thick cream envelope with a gold family crest pressed into the flap. My full name was printed in formal lettering on the front. At the bottom of the card, someone had added my assigned table 27. Most guests would have seen only a number. I knew the Montgomery estate. I had attended enough fundraisers, engagement dinners, and family events there to know exactly where table 27 would be placed. The main tables filled the center of the eastern garden. Close relatives sat near the aisle. Major donors and business partners were positioned beneath the covered terrace. Table 27 belonged behind a wide stone column near the kitchen entrance. Servers passed through that section carrying trays, empty glasses, and bags of used linens. The seat was not right. My former mother-in-law, Eleanor Montgomery, had spent decades deciding where people belonged. She could communicate an entire social judgment through a place card. The invitation was meant to tell me that although I was legally welcome, I was no longer considered part of anything that mattered. I stood in my kitchen, holding the card while my 3 sons argued in the living room about whether a bulldozer could defeat a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Then I set the invitation beside the coffee maker and called my attorney. To understand why I decided to attend, you need to understand the family I had married into. The Montgomerys had more than money. To museums, university programs, hospital wings, investment firms, and charitable foundations across Chicago. Their fortune had been built over 3 generations through property, shipping, private equity, and carefully managed marriages. People called it old money. What that really meant was that their rules had existed long enough to appear natural. Eleanor was the person who enforced those rules. She had married into the family at 22 and spent the next 40 years becoming more influential than many of the relatives born with the name. She chaired boards, controlled donations, arranged introductions, and decided which scandals disappeared quietly. At public events, Eleanor appeared gracious. She remembered spouses, children, illnesses, and promotions. She knew which journalist covered which charity and which donor wanted to sit near which politician. Her cruelty was almost never direct. She did not tell me my clothes looked inexpensive. She asked where I had found such an unusual little dress. She did not say my work was unimportant. She introduced me as someone who helped businesses with paperwork. Even though I worked in financial compliance and investigated complex regulatory exposure, she did not ask me to leave conversations. She arranged dinners, so I was seated close enough to hear them, but every single act was small enough to deny. Together, they made her opinion unmistakable. I did not belong. Her son, Ethan, was better at making people feel welcome. That was one reason I married him. I met him when I was 29 at a fundraising event for the Chicago Symphony. My employer audited part of the organization's endowment, so I was there for work. Ethan attended because his family had donated millions to the institution. We met near the reception tables. He asked what I did. When I said financial compliance, I expected the usual polite smile and change of subject. Instead, he asked how organizations hid risky transactions without technically falsifying their reports. It was a good question. We spoke for nearly an hour. A car arrived at my apartment the following evening with a note asking me to dinner. Ethan was attentive in ways that felt unusually specific. He remembered which coffee I ordered. He read articles about my work. He asked questions and listened to the answers. When he focused on me, I felt as though I had become the only person in the room. We dated for 8 months. He proposed during the 9th. We were married 11 months after our first meeting. My older sister, Denise, thought we were moving too quickly. He knows what he wants, I told her. So does someone bidding on a property, she said. That doesn't mean they checked for structural damage. I laughed. Denise did not. During the first year, I believed she had been overly cautious. Ethan encouraged my career and never asked me to stop working. We traveled often and attended events that belonged to a world I had previously seen only in magazines. He seemed protective when strangers became too interested in my background. He also warned me that his mother required patience. She takes time to accept people, he said. I assumed that meant she would eventually accept me. It did not. Eleanor tolerated me because opposing the marriage publicly would have made her look controlling. She waited for the relationship to fail on its own. During our second year, her behavior became harder to dismiss. At one dinner, She seated me beside a retired judge who could not hear anything I said. Ethan sat across the room with his cousins and several investors. When I mentioned the arrangement afterward, he said his mother had probably been balancing personalities. She always balances me out of the conversation, I said. You're reading hostility into a seating chart. At a museum reception, Eleanor introduced me to a board member as Ethan's wife without using my name. The woman asked how long we had been married. Eleanor answered before I could. It still feels like a very new arrangement. We had been married for almost 3 years. Ethan heard her. He did not correct her. In the car, I asked why. She was making conversation. She described our marriage as temporary. That isn't what she said. It is what she meant. He rubbed his forehead. Why does everything involving my mother have to become a confrontation? That was the rule of the family. Eleanor could insult me through implication. If I named the implication, I was the person causing conflict. Ethan admitted privately that he noticed some of her behavior. He still did nothing. That's how she is, he said repeatedly. She was like that with people she wanted to reduce. Our marriage did not end with an explosive fight. There was no confession, screaming, or broken furniture. A courier brought divorce papers to my office on a Tuesday afternoon. I called Ethan immediately. He said he had concluded that we wanted different lives. You reached that conclusion without talking to me? We've been talking for years, not about divorce. You're unhappy. I'm unhappy with the way your family treats me. My family is part of my life. I never asked you to abandon them. You ask me to choose sides every time my mother says something you don't like. I asked you to act like my husband. He became quiet. Then he said, this is exactly why it isn't working. His attorney cited irreconcilable differences. I had expected a marriage between two adults. Ethan had expected me to enter the Montgomery structure, adjust to it, and eventually stop questioning anything that made me uncomfortable. When I refused, I became the problem his family needed removed. The settlement was uncomplicated. I had my own income, savings, and professional credentials. I had signed a prenup and had no desire to fight for the Montgomery fortune. I requested only what I had owned before the marriage. Ethan appeared almost offended. You're entitled to more under the agreement, he told me during one legal meeting. I don't want it. Your attorney should advise you properly. She has. Then why refuse? Because I don't want the rest of my life funded by your family. He studied me across the conference table. Money solved most problems in Ethan's world. My refusal left him with no clean explanation for me. We signed the final documents in a glass office overlooking Lake Michigan. At the end, I shook his hand. He watched me leave as though he still had not decided what kind of person I was. 2 weeks later, I learned I was pregnant. I had gone to the doctor because I was exhausted, nauseated, and unable to concentrate. I assumed the divorce had affected me physically. Dr. Priya Ramachandran performed an ultrasound. She studied the screen for longer than I expected. Is something wrong? I asked. No, but there is more than one. Twins, she adjusted the image. 3, I looked at her. 3 babies? Yes, triplets. I stared at the screen while she pointed to each one. The pregnancy had begun before Ethan filed for divorce. The dates were not questionable. He was their father. The obvious next step was to call him. I knew that a father had a right to know his children existed. Children could also have a right to know their father, but I did not think only about Ethan. I thought about Eleanor. I pictured her learning that 3 future Montgomery heirs were developing inside the body of a woman she had spent years trying to remove. There would be attorneys before the next medical appointment. There would be demands about doctors, hospitals, names, schools, trusts, residences, and access. My babies would stop being babies. They would become family assets, refuse to protect his adult wife from Eleanor's control. I did not believe he would suddenly oppose her on behalf of 3 infants. I went home and wrote 2 lists. On the first, I listed every reason to tell him. He was their father. The boys might resent me later. Keeping the pregnancy private could create legal consequences. Raising 3 children alone would be difficult. On the second, I wrote what I feared, a custody battle funded by nearly unlimited money. Eleanor controlling their childhood, the boys being raised to value the family name above their own judgment, my role as their mother being treated as an inconvenience. I cried until late that evening. Then I called Denise. I'm pregnant. She became quiet. With Ethan's baby? Babies. How many? 3. Denise took a long breath. Then she asked, what do you need? Not how could this happen? What do you need? I need time to think. Then take it. I don't know whether I'm going to tell him. Are you doing this to hurt him? No. Are you sure? I considered the question honestly. I'm angry, but I'm not trying to punish him. I'm afraid of his family. Then build a life strong enough that fear doesn't make every future decision for you. That was what I did. I did not tell Ethan about the pregnancy. I also did not treat him as though he had consciously abandoned the boys. I hired Margaret Chu, a Chicago family law attorney with more than 20 years of experience. I told her the truth. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, You need to understand that silence is also a decision. A court may examine it later, understand. Living with the consequences will be different. What do you recommend? I recommend documentation, medical records, finances, childcare, housing, education, and every major decision. Do not claim the father rejected the children when you have chosen not to notify him. I agreed. That distinction remained important to me. My sons did not grow up hearing that their father had refused them. He had not. He did not know. After the divorce, I left my previous employer and began consulting independently. My experience in regulatory compliance became unexpectedly valuable to private equity groups, family offices, and wealthy individuals whose business structures crossed complicated legal boundaries. I knew how to find risk inside ordinary paperwork. I knew how to trace money through layers of entities. I knew which gaps were accidental and which had been created deliberately. Within 18 months, I had enough clients to support myself and 3 children. Within 3 years, I had built a successful firm. The boys were born early but healthy. Liam arrived first by 4 minutes, a fact he later treated as a permanent leadership qualification. Noah was quieter and watched people carefully before deciding whether to trust them. Caleb treated every household rule as an invitation to test its engineering. I raised them in Evanston. Denise helped. My mother visited regularly. Mrs. Okafor began working with us when the boys were infants and became one of the most important people in their lives. They did not have a traditional family. They had a stable one. They knew they had a father. When they were very small, that information was enough. At 4, Liam began asking harder questions. Is our dad dead? No. Does he live far away? Not very? Not yet. Why? The answer is complicated, and I want to explain it when you're old enough to understand all of it. That means someone did something bad. It means adults made difficult choices. Did you? Yes. That answer surprised him. I never wanted to create a story where I appeared perfect. One day, the boys would judge my decision for themselves. They deserved the complete truth when they were ready. They were 5 when the wedding invitation arrived. Ethan was marrying Caroline Hastings, the daughter of another prominent Chicago family. The engagement announcement appeared in the society section of the Tribune. Caroline was elegant, educated, and connected to exactly the right people. She was the woman Eleanor would have selected if she had been allowed to conduct interviews for her son's wife. I had no desire to attend their wedding. Then I saw table 27. The insult was so deliberate that it made something clear. Eleanor still believed she could define my position. She expected me to decline because I was ashamed or attend alone and accept the humiliation. She did not know the most significant part of my life existed. I called Margaret. Ethan is getting married. I saw the announcement. They invited me. Margaret paused. Where are you seated? Table 27. She knew the estate, too. That was his mother. Yes. What are you considering? Going alone with the boys. I heard her move something on her desk. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Margaret did not ask me to reconsider emotionally. She asked me to explain the plan. I told her I would use the invitation issued in my name, bring my children as guests, sit at the assigned table, and avoid interrupting the ceremony. I would not make an announcement. I would answer truthfully if approached. When those children enter that estate, their existence becomes public. Margaret said. There will be witnesses and photographs. Ethan's family will react immediately, and they may pursue paternity, custody, and support within days. I have prepared for 5 years. Then we make certain your preparation survives contact with their attorneys. Over the next 3 days, Margaret assembled a complete legal file, birth records, establishing the conception timeline, financial statements showing 5 years of sole support, property and school records, child care records, a preliminary evaluation from Dr. Anita Patel, a psychologist experienced in high-conflict custody cases. Dr. Patel met the boys and observed us at home. She described them as healthy, secure, well-adjusted children living in a stable environment with a consistent primary caregiver. A forensic document specialist named James Whitmore prepared a certified timeline. The dates established that Ethan had initiated the divorce before I could have known I was pregnant, and that I discovered the pregnancy only after the settlement was complete. That prevents them from arguing that you used the children to manipulate the divorce, Margaret explained. They can still say I hid them. They will. We are not denying that. She opened another section of the file. We also have records of the hostile family environment during your marriage. I looked at the seating charts, correspondence, event invitations, and witness statements she had preserved. You've been collecting this for years. Margaret almost smiled. You were far too calm when you signed the divorce papers. I suspected you had not reached the end of the situation. Why didn't you tell me? You were building a business and raising 3 babies. You didn't need another prediction. She pushed the file toward me. This is not a weapon. It protects the life your children already have. We prepared for several possibilities. If Eleanor ordered security to remove us, the public scene would create witnesses. We had immediate evidence showing no emergency existed. If the family contacted the press, my records demonstrated that I had raised the children privately without using their name or money. Margaret advised me to remain visible, calm, and truthful. Do not let them move you into a private room, she said. Private rooms are where powerful families control the record. I ordered 3 black suits in children's sizes. The night before the wedding, I slept badly. I listened to the boys breathing through the monitor. I still kept out of habit. I thought about every Montgomery dinner where Eleanor had placed me at the edge. Then I thought about the 3 children sleeping down the hall. At 6:47 the next morning, Liam climbed into my bed. No, ate a bug. I sat up. What? It was on the floor. Noah was standing in the hallway chewing. It was a raisin, he said. That was my life, not family trust, not newspaper announcements. A 5-year-old reporting a possible insect before breakfast. The estate was 40 minutes away. The boys sat in the back seat wearing their matching jackets. Do all these houses belong to the wedding family? No. We're going to one house. It's that big? Yes. Noah adjusted his tie. Are they nice? I considered the answer. Some people get uncomfortable when life doesn't follow their plan, like Caleb when his crackers break. Exactly. Caleb frowned. My shoes hurt on the inside. They fit. They still hurt inside. That is where shoes usually touch your feet. He looked betrayed. We arrived shortly after 2. Valets directed cars through the gates. Guests wearing expensive clothes in careful neutral colors. A string quartet played near the terrace. White roses covered the arches, tables, and railings. I wore burgundy. I handed over my keys and opened the back door. Liam stepped out first and straightened his jacket with the same motion Ethan used before entering a meeting. Noah followed, studying everything. Caleb looked at the estate. It looks like a movie. It does. I held their hands, and we started walking. A woman near the driveway noticed us. Her gaze moved from me to the boys. She looked away and then immediately looked back. Other people followed her attention. Conversations weakened as we passed. A man near the champagne table stopped speaking halfway through a sentence. 3 boys in matching suits would have attracted attention anywhere. 3 boys who looked exactly like the groom attracted something else. They had Ethan's dark eyes, his warm brown hair, his jaw. Even the way Liam studied strangers before speaking resembled him. I heard someone whisper, "Are those his?" I continued toward the seating display. The attendant found my name. Table 27. It's located just beyond. Then I looked toward the house. Eleanor stood on the upper balcony in a pale gray dress with pearls at her throat. She had positioned herself above the garden, surveying the event. Her eyes reached me first, then they moved to the boys. Her hands closed around the stone railing. Eleanor had managed scandals and private disasters without losing control of her expression. She became completely still. I met her eyes briefly. Then I took my sons to table 27. It was behind the pillar, exactly as expected. The kitchen doors opened and closed a few feet away. I pulled out the boys' chairs, poured water, and confirmed that the snacks I had requested were available. Stay close, I said. Use quiet voices. Touch my hand if you feel uncomfortable. Is there cake? Caleb asked. After the ceremony. How long? Not very long. Promise? Caleb, people have been getting married for thousands of years. You'll survive one ceremony. My phone began vibrating inside my bag. I did not look at it. A woman from the event staff approached. Ems Reyes? Yes, Mr. Hargrove from the family office would like to speak with you near the East Terrace. I'll be available after the ceremony. He said the matter was urgent. He can come to this table. He was hoping for privacy. I'm staying with my children. Her professional smile remained in place. I'll pass that along. She left. The ceremony began a few minutes later. Ethan entered from the main house. 5 years had not changed him dramatically. He looked older, more polished, and completely at home in the environment his family had created. Caroline walked down the aisle in a white gown. She appeared genuinely happy. For the first time that day, I questioned whether attending had been fair to her. She had not designed table 27 as far as I knew. She had not participated in my marriage or divorce. She was about to discover 3 major facts about her husband during her wedding. I did not enjoy that, but I also understood that keeping the truth hidden to protect a perfect ceremony would simply repeat the pattern that had controlled my marriage. Ethan did not notice us immediately. During the exchange of rings, Caleb reached for another bread roll. The movement drew Ethan's eyes toward the back. He saw me, then he saw Liam. His gaze moved to Noah and Caleb. His hand stopped with the ring halfway onto Caroline's finger. The change in his face happened quickly. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, then something deeper that I could not name. Caroline said something under her breath. Ethan blinked, completed the ring exchange, and faced the officiant again. His hands were no longer steady. The reception moved into the ballroom. We remained at table 27. When I finally checked my phone, there were 11 messages. Several came from unknown numbers connected to the Montgomery staff. Margaret had sent 2. Wedding photographs are already online. At least 2 show the boys. The public record now exists. Stay where people can see you and let the family approach. Ethan's cousin Derek arrived first. He had always been slightly kinder to me than the rest of the family. Hi, he said. Hi. Liam answered. Derek looked at the boys for several seconds. They look exactly like. I know. Does Ethan know? He does now. Derek sat in an empty chair. Eleanor has already called Richard Harcourt. Richard had been the Montgomery family's attorney for decades. I expected that. I've never seen her like this. Like what? Unprepared. He looked at Liam drawing on the back of a wedding program. Then he watched Noah lean against my arm and Caleb's, study you so calm. For 5 years, 3 people have depended on me to remain calm. Derek nodded. They seem like good kids. They are. He put down his glass. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the way the family treated you. Thank you on the table. I glanced at the pillar. The table is doing more work than Eleanor intended. Derek gave a brief, nervous laugh before returning to the main family group. 20 minutes later, a man from Eleanor's staff approached. Mrs. Montgomery would like to speak with you privately. She can speak with me here. She would prefer a quieter setting. My children stay with me. I can arrange supervision. No, he left without arguing. I adjusted Noah's jacket and stopped Liam from drawing on the tablecloth. I did not need to make a speech. The boy's presence was already saying everything. Eleanor came to us at 4:47. I noticed the time because Margaret had predicted she would approach before 5. She arrived without an attorney or assistant. That surprised me. She sat across from us and studied each boy. They have the Montgomery eyes, she said. Yes. For how long? 5 years. She looked at me. What do you want? That was how Eleanor understood conflict. Every problem contained a demand, a price, or a concession. I want the boys to know where they come from, I said. I want them to have the freedom to decide what relationship they want with their father and his family. That is all? That isn't small. She looked at Noah, who had fallen asleep against my side. No, she said. It isn't. Before your attorneys begin making plans, you need to understand something. She waited. They are children before they are Montgomery heirs. They have a home, a school, routines, friends, and people they trust. They are not assets you discovered at a wedding. You believe we would treat them as assets? I spent 3 years watching your family assign value to people. Her expression hardened slightly. They are Ethan's sons. They are also mine. For the first time, Eleanor was not speaking to me as an unwanted addition to her family. She was speaking to the person whose cooperation she needed. Ethan wants to come over, she said. He can. Ethan reached us after the formal photographs. He still wore his wedding suit. He stopped beside the table and looked at the boys. Liam looked up. Hi. Ethan's voice was unsteady. Hi, I'm Liam. I know. He did not know. He simply had nothing better. Caleb woke and stared at him. Caleb turned from the musicians. Is this the wedding man? Yes, I said. Caleb nodded and returned his attention to the quartet. Ethan sat down. They're mine. It was not a question. Yes. All 3? They're triplets. How old? 5? He looked at me. I didn't know. I know. You should have told me. Yes. My agreement stopped him, I continued. I made the decision I believed would protect them. You can argue that I was wrong. They may decide I was wrong when they are older. I will answer for it. He looked toward his mother. You thought you were protecting them from us. I knew your mother would see 3 heirs. I didn't know whether you would see 3 children before she told you what to see. That isn't fair. Maybe not. His eyes moved back to the boys. I want to know them. Then you need to show up consistently, not once today, not through gifts or lawyers over time. I can do that. You have to prove it to them. Across the room, Caroline was watching us. Her expression was difficult to read, and had just learned her husband had 3 sons. Ethan followed my gaze. I need to talk to her. Yes. Are you leaving? No, he nodded. Good. Margaret filed the initial paternity documents the following Monday. Ethan voluntarily submitted a DNA sample. The result confirmed he was the boy's biological father. His attorney was concerning custody, visitation, and child support. We responded with 5 years of records. There was no basis for an emergency change. The boys were healthy, safe, and stable. They had lived with one parent their entire lives and had never met Ethan. The process was difficult, but it did not become the legal war I had feared. Ethan did not demand immediate joint custody. He agreed to begin with supervised visits guided by Dr. Patel. The first meeting took place at a park. Liam brought questions. Why weren't you at our birthdays? I didn't know you existed. Why? Ethan looked toward me. I remained quiet. Your mother and I made decisions that affected you, he said. I'm still learning everything. That isn't a complete answer, Liam said. No, it isn't. Caleb asked Ethan whether he owned the wedding house. No, my mother does. Why does one person need that many rooms? I don't know. Does she have cake every day? No. Caleb appeared disappointed by the practical value of wealth. Ethan returned for the next meeting, then the next. At first, he brought expensive gifts. Dr. Patel told him to stop. The boys do not need proof that you can buy things, she said. They need evidence that you remember what they tell you. He began learning their teachers' names. He read the books they liked. He attended a school event and sat in the back without staff photographers or family representatives. He was awkward. He also kept showing up. Child support was calculated using his income and assets. The amount was substantial. placed most of it into protected accounts for education, healthcare, and the boys' future. I did not move into a Montgomery property. I did not close my firm. When Ethan suggested buying a larger home so each boy could have a separate suite, I refused. They share a bathroom now, I said. The resulting arguments are building character. Caroline contacted me about 2 months after the wedding. She requested a meeting through our attorneys. We met at a quiet coffee shop. "Did you come to the wedding to hurt me?" she asked. "No, you knew what would happen. I knew people would recognize the boys. You could have told Ethan earlier. Yes, so why choose my wedding? Your household invited me and placed me at a table intended to humiliate me. I decided not to arrive while hiding the most important part of my life. That sounds like revenge." Part of me wanted Eleanor to see that she had not erased me. Caroline looked down at her coffee. "At least that is honest. I did not intend to destroy your marriage, but you knew it could damage it." "Yes, Ethan says he had no idea. I believe him." She looked surprised. "You do?" His reaction was real. Then the answer changes. Sometimes him, his mother. Sometimes myself. Caroline stirred her drink. "That's the first answer anyone has given me that doesn't sound prepared by an attorney. We never became friends." She remained married to Ethan and treated the boys with patience that mattered. Eleanor waited 6 weeks before requesting a meeting. She selected a private restaurant downtown. When I arrived, she was already seated with tea. "I want to know my grandsons," she said. "What does that mean?" "I want them at the estate. I want them to understand their family." "You know what I mean." "I do. I want you to explain it without relying on the Montgomery name." She looked irritated. Then she tried again. "I want to be their grandmother. Time, care, education, and opportunities." "Listening?" "Yes." "Accepting boundaries?" She hesitated. "Yes, allowing them to be children rather than representatives of the family." "They are Montgomerys. They are Liam, Noah, and Caleb first. Eller, much harder than I expected. You gave me 5 years to become harder." For a moment, her mouth almost formed a real smile. "I was not kind to you," she said. "No, I believed you were temporary." "I know. I thought Ethan would eventually return to the life that suited him." "He did, and then you brought 3 boys who looked exactly like him to his wedding." "Yes." She looked toward the window. "I have often treated control as a form of care. They are not the same. I'm beginning to see that." It was more than Eleanor had ever admitted before. I agreed to limited supervised contact. Her first visit happened at my house. She arrived with 3 professionally wrapped wooden toys. Caleb played with the ribbon instead of the toy. Noah asked whether she had chosen the train herself. Eleanor admitted an assistant had helped. Liam asked why she had not known about them. She looked at me. "I did not rescue her. The adults in your family did not trust one another," she said. It was incomplete but honest enough for a first answer. The boys' contact with Ethan gradually expanded. 2-hour meetings became afternoons. Afternoons eventually became occasional weekends. There were therapy appointments, legal schedules, school meetings, and arguments that would never make an exciting story. Ethan sometimes attempted to solve problems with money. He had to learn that access could not be purchased. Eleanor once tried to arrange an interview for Liam at an exclusive preparatory school without asking me. I canceled it. She called immediately. "That school has a 2-year waiting list. He already attends a school. You are limiting him. You are doing what we discussed." She became silent. The next morning, she apologized. It was stiff and uncomfortable. It still counted. 3 months after the wedding, I was sitting in my kitchen while the boys ate breakfast. Liam was explaining why dinosaurs were superior to trucks. Noah divided his eggs into equal sections. Dennis sent me a message. "How did Ethan's first visit without you go?" "Better than expected," I replied. "Caleb talked for 2 hours. Ethan looked terrified." Denise sent back a laughing emoji. I looked at my sons. The difficult part was not over. We still had years of custody schedules, holidays, birthdays, questions, and family negotiations ahead of us. One day, they would be old enough to examine my choice to keep their existence private. They might understand it. They might resent it. They might do both. I would listen. The cream wedding invitation remained inside a drawer. I kept it because it marked the moment our private life became something no one could ignore. Table 27 had been selected to remind me that I was insignificant. Instead, it became the place where an old and powerful family first had to recognize my children. There was no dramatic public apology. Eleanor did not stand before the wedding guests and admit what she had done. Ethan did not become a perfect father overnight. I did not receive proof that every decision I had made was correct. Real families rarely provide that kind of ending. What I had was more complicated. My sons now knew their father. A legal agreement protected the home and routines they already had. Ethan was learning how to be present without expecting immediate love or forgiveness. Carolyn was building a marriage around information she should have received long before her wedding day. Eleanor was learning, slowly and imperfectly, that loving children required accepting things she could not control. For the boy's 6th birthday, she mailed 3 separate cards. Liam's had dinosaurs, Noah's had a train. Caleb's was plain, with a handwritten sentence inside. I hope you know that you are already impressive. Caleb studied the message. Can I keep this? He folded the card and placed it in his pajama pocket. Watching him, I felt something settle inside me. Not victory, not complete peace, something steadier. For 5 years, I had built a life strong enough to survive the day the Montgomery family discovered us. They had invited me to their estate, expecting a lonely former wife who could be hidden behind a pillar. They forgot to consider that I might not arrive alone.